After 8 years of marriage, Joel and Amanda Willoughby received the devastating diagnosis that they were unable to have children. Although their hopes for a family were crushed, they took a leap of faith and began the arduous journey of adoption. Welcome, Joe and Amanda. How are you? I have to say, your baby is the cutest. Little Chloe Grace. She is just so amazing. But I really want to know, you know, you're people of faith, worship, you love the Lord. Can you describe that moment when you both, as husband and wife, found out that you were unable to conceive? What was that like?
Well, it was shocking. It's something that you don't really think will happen to you, but it happened, and we knew God had a family for us. So I think right away for myself, I knew adoption was the way that God planned. But yeah, it was devastating. It was.
And I can imagine as a woman, you know, you don't, when you first get married, and if you've never had problems before, you don't assume, oh, you just assume I'll be able to conceive. So that as a woman, you feel, I'm not worthy. But as a husband, how does that feel? It
was a pretty difficult, you know, devastating moment, and one of those things that took a while to work through, but almost right away, I knew that we were supposed to adopt. And I grew up overseas. My parents are missionaries, and right away we started thinking about adoption, and we started thinking about adopting from overseas. And we eventually started looking for adoption agencies, and because you need to go through an agency if you're going to adopt from overseas. And we found an agency called Sunrise in North Vancouver, because we live out west near Vancouver. And eventually we started the process to adopt, and discovered how difficult it is to adopt from overseas and how long it takes. Which was going to be my next question. What is that process like for viewers out there who are thinking of adoption? What is that process like?
Well, the overseas adoption takes usually at least a couple years. So in the meantime, we put our name for the local adoption. Even there, then you have to go through a home study, so you're meeting with a social worker many times in your home. You go over different issues, you know, how you're brought up. You have to take multiple different courses about adoption.
So you have to take courses.
Yeah, you have
so it's not just, I want a baby,
Exactly.
I'm a great parent, I think I'm great. So there's an actual process and class that you have to take.
It takes many months.
Really?
Yeah, and so that could be really overwhelming for some people as well. And it was, but it was a great agency, and we had a great social worker, and we just knew this is what we'll do, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Now, do people usually, when they're thinking of adoption, think of internationally, or do they think, oh, I'm here? What was that process for you when you thought, let's do it internationally first? Is it easier, or is there a difference?
It depends on which country you're adopting from as well. We kind of thought of Africa because Joel grew up in Africa when he was younger, so that came to our mind. Now, because it was going to take at least 2 years, we thought, well, we'll put our name on the domestic list for BC in the meantime, and think, okay, well, maybe we'll be able, or we'll be chosen. When you're put on the domestic list, a birth mother chooses you, so it's different from international. International, you just wait. You're on a wait list, so you just keep going up. So in BC, you would do a whole profile about yourself. So pictures, information, who we are, almost trying to sell yourself. So a birth mother will look at this, and she'll see different things that she'll like, or it could be anything. So you just wait and wait. It could happen really soon, or it could never happen.
Yeah, you never know.
So you're waiting, right? You're in this process, you're believing God. And the question that I must ask and have to ask, how was your faith tested? Because I'm sure there was moments where you were wondering, Lord, is this, or how it will happen? How did that affect you as a married couple? Yeah,
I think that it was one of those things where our faith really grew, because we had to trust that this was what God wanted us to do. When you're waiting and waiting for something, you're dreaming about it, you're praying about it, you really do believe that that's what God wants you to do, but nothing's happening, and there's maybe a potential, there's a couple moments where there were opportunities where it might have happened sooner, but for whatever reason we weren't chosen to adopt or whatever. So it's one of those things where you can get really discouraged, and you just have to keep reminding yourself, no, God has this plan for us. We know that this is what we're supposed to be doing, and we just kind of hung in there and eventually got the call, you know.
So the moment you get the phone call, describe that. when you look at each other and you say, we're getting our baby?
Right.
What is that like?
Well, it was surreal. Like, it was, we were kind of thinking that the BC adoption wasn't going to happen because it was over 2 years. So we're like, okay, we're getting close to Africa, the African adoption. So we put the BC out of our mind. So when we got the call, it was like, oh wow, this is actually happening. But then you start kind of second guessing too, because nothing's for sure until the
because there's a moment where the mother can
she has 30,
her
in BC it's 30
wanting
days
to give it up.
30 days after the child is born, the birth mother.
They have 30 days to make a decision saying, I want her back, or you can be the That is...
we brought her home right away.
You're talking about, like, Lord, you're saying every prayer, and you have to say that. So you finally meet your baby, and you bring her home.
Yeah, we were so blessed and thankful. Her birth mother is just, she's from a Christian family, and they were so amazing, and she was very mature about the whole process, and she had made up her mind, so that even though it was still hard, but
she knew it was amazing. She knew that God wanted her to do this, and she knew that God had a family for her child. It was amazing. It was amazing how it worked out, and so the birth mom and the birth father both eventually signed off on the adoption, and everything went great, you know. But yeah, that first month was really difficult because you never know, could they change their minds? Would something change? You know.
But I think through the whole process, everything was out of our control. So it was like, okay, well, God, you've brought us, you know, to this point. We're trusting. We know, you know, this child will be for us.
Absolutely. Now, do you have a choice of whether you receive a boy or a girl, or you put on a list, I would love a little girl with blue eyes, blonde hair, and she'd just be so beautiful, or is it really just
open for anything? We had no idea, so we didn't know whether our child is going to be a boy or a girl. We had a relationship with the birth family before, and they asked, so do you want to know? We said, no, don't tell us.
We wanted it to be a surprise.
So, but I had a dream that it was going to be a girl 2 weeks before she was born. And this beautiful girl with blue eyes, and sure enough, when we first met her and held her, there she is, picture of her, beautiful girl with blue eyes, and just this amazing, beautiful blessing, just an amazing girl. Chloe Grace.
Chloe Grace, what a beautiful name. Now, you know, sometimes adoptive parents choose to not reveal that the child has been adopted. Is that something that, are you making a choice to later tell her, you know, later on and tell her that she was adopted, so that way, because it can be heavy for a child to find out that you aren't the real parents, although you've raised.
So, we will definitely tell her she's adopted from a, you know, from a certain age where she can understand. We'll talk to her about it in age-appropriate language. You know, they have books now where you can read about adoption stories, and it's, you know, we've heard it's a lot healthier for the child, so they know all along this is, you know, your birth mother, birth father. So we have visits a few times a year with her birth parent. It's called an openness agreement. So compared to years ago where the birth parent had no contact with their, you know, child, nowadays they encourage an openness agreement. So you'll have that contact. We'll send pictures once in a while to the birth parents, so they know how she's doing. They just want to know that she's doing well.
Well, I mean, it's a hard process for them, you know, for the both of you, but for that mother who is wondering, is my child okay? I think that's so amazing that they would do that, because like you said, back in the day it was just shut the door and you don't know have any information at all on the child.
And then
it's a lot healthier to do it that way. You know, they don't have as many questions, and the questions that they do have, it can be answered by their birth parents and by, you know, by us. And
absolutely.
And they're wondering who they are, or maybe where their parents, you know, are, or where they came from, kind of thing, or maybe their ethnicity, or different things like that, right?
Because the biggest question that rises for a child is, why didn't they want me?
Right.
Automatically they feel that rejection when all you have been doing is loving them. So having an open conversation, and even reading books, I love that. Reading books, because sometimes as parents we're like, what do we say? We don't know. So having that open conversation.
One of the most important things that we want to do is let Chloe know as she gets older that she was chosen, you know, that it was a part of God's plan, and that she's so loved. From the moment she was born, she was surrounded by so many different people. the different birth families, and just surrounded by so many people who loved her. And that's what we want her to know, that she is loved, and that adoption is an amazing thing. And that's what we want to do as a couple, is to let people know that adoption is something that we wish more people would think of and would consider. It's not always talked about in today's society. Sometimes it's glossed over, and it's not even looked at as an option for a lot of young girls. But adoption is something that, if you're a Christian and you know your Bible, we as Christians were adopted as sons and daughters into God's family. When you adopt, you're part of that redeeming process. And we want people to know that. We want to be a part of that, and that's our message today, really, is we want people to know that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Your story today, I'm sure someone who's watching out there, it clicked and saying, wow, maybe adoption is an option and I shouldn't be afraid. Your story is courageous and beautiful, and your daughter is just so yummy. And thank you so much for being here. She's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.